I'm sorry, I have a little light coming down on me. But if you're not familiar with Zoom, know that pull up your chat. It's at the bottom. This is being recorded because we want people to be able to log in and actually watch this later. If you look at the chat, that is how you can ask questions. And I'll be following the chat. Cal will follow the chat. And just know that, we'll be able to have this Q&A at the end, if that's okay. It's pretty interactive at times, so we don't mind. Like if I see something that I feel like it was an easy way for me to just not interrupt you, Cal, but just to question, I'll definitely jump in and do that. Cal, I do have you so you can share your screen, so you're all set there.
Excellent.
And then, utilize the chat, very open. We're so happy to have you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sue Weldon, and I'm so grateful that we're able to do this type of speaker series. It's been very impactful. We're able to get a lot of inspirational speakers, empowerment, just at a time where we need that connection more than ever. And to be able to make it accessible for you, and you can hop on, not have to use your passport, but get access to it because you're in our community. We are so happy to be able to serve. And today, so good to have you, Cal. Like I get so lifted up every time I hear you speak. You do, and my staff feels the same way. I know Gail will jump in the same way. And you are in for a treat. And Cal has been with us for, I want to say, close to 7 years now, Cal.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You really took our massage program and just brought it to a level that allowed us to make sure that we had protocol that was the gold standard for those that we treat. And it really has been impactful. And then you moved into an advisory role and moved into a role that was very lucrative for our women living with metastatic disease. You offer your services to us, so many ways, in so many ways. And we're truly honored. So when this came up, it was no surprise that you had a beautiful showing for today. I love the topic. I think it's so needed. And, I actually saw, do you have a new entity now, Cal Cakes?
I do. Yeah. It's part of the proverbial COVID pivot. Yeah.
I figured that, founder, CEO of Here Well. So, definitely has a lot of experience as, innovative and knowing, how to operate in this space that you are in, that you can help people who are, really struggling with illness or struggling with emotional stress. And then it sounds like you started another pivot. So kudos to you. And I feel like without further ado, I'm going to bring on Cal, and then I'll keep letting people in. So Cal, here you go. Let me know if you need any help with anything.
Okay.
And you got it. You're up. There you are.
Okay. Let me figure out how to share my situation here. Stick with me. Share screen.
I'll keep everybody on mute except for Cal. And then, of course, use your chat. If you just, if you want to put in there, anything about yourself that you want to share, feel free to, always good to get a little bit more personal on these types of platforms.
Definitely. And I don't mind being interrupted at all. I mean, if there's one thing about this sort of format when I do conferences and things is that I do miss that. I love to be interrupted, and I love to, see how people are responding. And it is certainly an honor to see so many people and so many people's faces that I've seen before and have had the opportunity to see in the flesh when we, in the olden days, when we all met in person. So when Gail and Sue reached out to me, we sort of talked about what might be useful. And, I think that what I've got here for you all is, a shade of what I often discuss and share with you all. And luckily it's a timeless truth. So it's always in fashion. And it's basically the ground under our feet, and that, it's very easy to feel anxious. Well, we could just put a period on that. It's very easy to feel anxious. And then certainly when we look at the world, that is definitely a thing that is happening for a lot of people. So I want to kind of just walk through some things that we forget to notice. And I the caveat that I often offer is you're unlikely to learn anything new in this presentation, in this talk, but it's full of what I hope you'll find to be useful reminders and maybe different ways to think about things that you already know, and that it's just so easy to forget when we get swept up in the current of whatever's happening in the world. So we'll start with the irony of the title of this talk, because there really is no ground under our feet. And, you know, the anxiety in large part from the exhaustion that we heap upon ourselves in trying to avoid the fact of this. And that, you know, just when you get everything set, it unsets, it breaks, something happens that you didn't expect. And it doesn't matter how well you plan or how good you are, the ground just keeps coming out from under your feet. And, you know, we make these contracts, we make promises, we build walls, and none of this stuff is able to make us feel safe in the way we think about safety for very long. And part of the challenge is that we don't understand safety. There's so many words in our language, in our very limited language, that, you know, safety is sort of, we have this story that safety means everything's going to work. Everything's going to go the way I want it to go. I'm not going to have to feel anything, really. And so when we come from this place where we think that when things don't go the way we imagined, something's going wrong, it's really tiring. And when we come back to the truth of, we will die, the people we love will die, our planet will be hit by a deadly pandemic, all of these things that we wouldn't choose that continue to happen, forest catching fire, will survive an accident that maybe no one else would have survived. We get a check in the mail. All kinds of things happen that we could put in the good basket or the bad basket that we didn't pick or couldn't have planned for. And so, you know, when we look at what's happening right now, I mean, how many of you put cancer on your calendar for 2020, right? Like, not a thing. And some of you may have come to 2020 with cancer, so probably at least had it on the bottom part of the margin for 2020, but then 2020 surprised us with all kinds of other things. And, you know, if you're just noticing in yourself a story, wanting to tell a different story, we can just sort of look around us and see that all of this stuff has happened just in this year. And some of it is almost comical. You know, there have certainly been plenty of memes out there about how nature is fighting back, and we have murder hornets and terror crocodiles and Burmese pythons taking over Florida. And then we have the very serious Burmese pythons taking over Florida is not a serious issue. If you live in Florida, I guarantee it's a serious issue. But George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor's murder, for which there were no charges brought, these are things we wouldn't pick and that we couldn't have prepared for. And then, of course, our good friend, COVID-19, has certainly in our country, the way that it's been handled has really upended our lives. And that is all amidst a crazy political cycle and all of these things that you keep looking down, waiting for there to be ground under your feet, and there just isn't any. So for me, I sort of, there has been plenty of wailing and gnashing. There has been some crying. There has been some sort of like first, like just one break, something. But mostly 2020 has been an amazing teacher. And, you know, I feel like the way that our lives typically go, there's enough space between what we would consider sort of catastrophes that we have time to build up our story about how things are going to be okay. And if I prepare and the ground will come back under my feet. And so we do all these things to try to put ground under our feet. And the things that we do are, you know, we look on the bright side. Oh, well, at least you insert thing to try to make it suck less. You know, we try to put kind of a silver lining on it. And certainly, I think anytime that something unexpected happens, whether it be cancer or whether it be a global pandemic, people find themselves doing things that they never would have done, that thank God those things happened, and shifts happen that are in fact a silver lining. But there's also just a lot of stuff that sucks, and it can be okay to let things suck. You know, we do all these things to at least feel temporarily like we have ground. We eat, we buy things, we schedule things, we plan, We do whatever we can to sort of anticipate and almost to sort of like go, ha, gotcha, to the universe, right? Like, oh, I saw that coming and I was ready. And sometimes you win. Sometimes you do beat the universe at its own game. But mostly we just wear ourselves out trying to prevent change. And change is one of the only facts that we have out there. So I think this is an important place to note that there's no sort of activity or mental habit that is inherently negative or non-nourishing. You know, we joke in my household all the time about how sometimes a donut is just a donut, and then other times a donut tastes a lot like feelings. And so, you know for yourself when you're doing those things to just try to get ground under your feet, or to feel less anxious about noticing that there's nothing holding you up, and that, the next moment something could change that you wish wouldn't change. So one of the layers of our sort of lack of understanding or our resistance to this concept is that impermanence, as it's often talked about in sort of Buddhist circles, is this idea that things always change. And it's not actually the impermanence, it's our resistance to our fundamental uncertainty, whether we have cancer, whether we are just a person out in the world who has a job that we might lose, our existence as humans is fundamentally uncertain. Even our survival as a species is fundamentally uncertain. And so that's where this discomfort arises from. And it's normal, it's neurotypical, it's super common. You are not alone in hating the truth of that, but noticing that it's really the hating of it, not the truth of it. This is the weird sort of dog chasing its tail of suffering, is that it's not that change is constant. It's that we spend all our time hating that that's true. And the hating doesn't change it. So how can we, without sugarcoating it, without putting a nice ribbon on it, without silver lining it, how can we welcome the truth of change? And I move away from people say, well, just accept it. But I feel like when you say the word accept, you're sort of crossing your arms and you're sort of like, well, it is what it is. Here I am hating it, but accepting it. And that, I often propose the word surrender as an alternative to accept, because accept really is like, I'm just going to let this be, as though you have the power to allow it. It's going to be whether you accept it or not. And how can we open to this is what's happening? And that opening and loving this, preferring, choosing aren't the same. Receiving a thing is not the same as saying, oh, thank you so much. So that's a hard place to live. And I think particularly, and maybe people have said this across the generations, but we're in a really polarized time. And the idea of nuance, which is actually the truth of human experience, it's not getting a lot of play these days. It's seeming, the world is acting like things are very black and white, and they just aren't. There would almost be a simplicity, I think, if they were. But those of us who are paying attention are having an incredibly nuanced experience and feeling very alone in that experience. And when we want things to continue or to, I posted a blog today about how people keep saying, I can't wait for things to go back to normal. And there's an amazing woman, Sonia Renee Taylor, who has written a book called The Body Is Not an Apology. And her website is fantastic. You should Google Sonia Renee Taylor and watch her TED Talks. And just her concept is basically radical self-love. And I'm not gonna be able to quote it, but basically she said, we will not go back to the way things were before, because normal was greed and disconnection and all of these things, depletion, extraction, greed, hate, racism, lack. This is the world that we were living in, and that we're so desperate to get back to, but it was moving so quickly that we just went with the tide. And COVID has given us an opportunity that we're completely missing because we're so mad that it's not the way it was. And things have been forced to stop. Things have been forced to slow down. we have this opportunity to really decide what gets started again. What was I doing that I don't do now because of COVID? That, God, I'm so glad COVID gave me an excuse to stop doing that. Or now I am doing this thing that I never had time or space to do before. And, you know, the world that we lived in before was, well, and still is. I mean, people are still fighting to get back to our sort of fast-paced, greed-based, earth-destroying sort of way of living. But the change that is inevitable is giving us this opportunity. And whether it be cancer, whether it be COVID, these massive life-changing things give us an opportunity. And it's not an opportunity to shame each other that, oh, well, you're not using your cancer to shift the paradigm of your life. It's not a competition. It's just an option. And it's something that it's really easy to miss the opportunity to do something different, to feel something different. This talk came at a really good time because I'm preparing for a class that starts in November that I'm teaching called A Year to Live. And I've been reading all kinds of stuff to kind of prepare what we're going to do in the course each month. And the book that sort of is the backbone of the course is called A Year to Live. And in a couple of the chapters, he talks a lot about fear, and particularly fear of dying. And he pulls apart fear and talks about relating to it versus relating from it. And it can be a little bit of a word trick, but I feel like, you know, letting go of our suffering is some of the hardest work that we will do in our lives if we choose to do it. And whether you call it suffering, you know, the Buddhists call it suffering. And I feel like, you know, as a quick Cliff's Notes, suffering in English is, you think of like children starving and people dying in Calcutta and like really horrible things, right? But suffering is basically, my coffee is cold and I wish it wasn't. You know, it's just not being happy with what's in front of you. And our letting go of that, when we see what we've done to and with our lives by rejecting most of what comes our way or just not preferring it, we go, oh man, this could be so much easier. And it's not that life becomes easy, but you notice that some of the struggle is and was optional. And, you know, it's really easy to become our fear, to become our longing, to become our anxiety, our worry, to become our fear that we won't achieve our imagined future. And we find ourselves relating from that place rather than to it. And we sort of say, I am afraid, rather than I am feeling fear. I am confused. I feel confused. And that, you know, when you talk about it and experience it in a way that it is you, it can become consuming, and it can become very hard to see the ways that we could pull back from, this is happening outside of me. This is happening to me. I am in this. I am relating to it. But if I'm relating from it, everything I see is sort of framed through the lens of whether it's anger, hurt, confusion, and that I have another choice. There is actually always an option. And, you know, if we open to this reality of constant change, would we keep holding on so tightly? You know, would we be able to understand, you know, I sort of talk about, it's like building a sandcastle when the tide is coming in. I'm sure many of us have had that experience. Like you get it looking just the way you want, and then this big wave comes up and just washes everything away. And I've been doing jigsaw puzzles during COVID, which is a thing I forgot I really liked. And it's so funny because as soon as I finish one, and they'll usually take me, you know, a month or so, because I'll work a couple hours, you know, a couple nights a week. And my son watched me finish one, and then I just took it apart and put it back in the box. And he was like, what? And I was like, right, like, what am I going to do with this? This was awesome. The experience of putting this together was super fun, but I don't have any place to put this. I don't actually want to look at this picture over and over. It was about putting the pieces in and like sitting there and going, I know these pieces fit. And with almost every puzzle, there's like a, maybe these pieces don't fit. Maybe whoever boxed this up at the puzzle store put the wrong pieces in. But then you just sort of you find one, and then you find another one, and then you realize that these 3 pieces you put over here actually go over here, and then it starts to go together. But then you are really looking at that and not sort of thinking about lots of other things. And when it's done, it's done. And it's not about creating a thing to save and hold. And it's been really interesting to watch how he's sort of learned from our culture that when you make something, you keep it, right? And you hang on to it. You lacquer it, you put it in a frame, whatever, and then your kids get it. And what if we just were like, yep, that was cool, and now it goes back in the box and someone else will go and use it. It's sort of anathema to the way that we think about, if I've put in this effort, I should have something external and grabbable to sort of show for it. This relates to this thinking about your life versus living your life. And when we're in fear, when we're in anxiety, when we're in confusion, we're in sort of like a constant planning mode, and we're missing what's right in front of us. And it's really easy to do. And there has been a lot written in the neurological journals and in books about how our brains behave, that we actually can't perceive everything in our reality every moment. Like our brains don't have, that would be too time consuming and resource consuming for our brains. So our brains actually make little maps and connect little dots, so that, like, I've seen Sue a lot of times. I don't really see Sue. Like, my brain goes, oh, that's Sue. And like, unless Sue had, like, if Sue shaved all her hair off, or if Sue had a crazy hat on, my brain would go, wait a minute, is that Sue? And then I would actually look at Sue. But this is what we do with the people in our lives, with the activities we engage in on a regular basis. We're not fully there because our brain's default is to fill in the gaps of the stuff that seems the same. So it's a challenge to actually live your life and to feel more than you phone in. And we have to make that choice. And certainly when you are feeling relentlessly nauseated, when you are going in for another bone aspiration, when you are not able to eat the things that you want to do, the actual spiritual and physical energy it takes to pay attention is maybe not a resource you have. So there also has to be some grace in here and some sort of self-forgiveness in, like, what am I able to do today? What is reasonable to expect of myself, including in terms of what you're doing externally with and for other people. I think when we are not feeling well, we tend to make sure, I will say this is probably more of a female thing, but that we want to make sure that the other people are taken care of. So at the risk of our own health, safety, comfort, we use whatever resources we have to make sure everyone else is okay. And that is a thing that can deplete us. And that part of our making everyone else okay is helping everyone else hold up their story about how things aren't going to change, about how everything's going to be okay. And everything is going to be okay, depending on your definition of okay. If everything being okay means my cancer goes away and I live another 80 years and we win the lottery and all these other things that may or may not happen, we're going to struggle to get to a place of okay. But if okay means that each day I'm going to try to see you and you're going to try to see me and we're going to be kind to each other, and I'm going to try to be more than my pain or more than my nausea, that's a reasonable bargain to make. And that is enough space for yourself to feel like you have ground where there is no ground. So, I was thinking about sort of how do we talk about this idea of thinking your life versus living your life? And it's sort of like we've all had the experience of driving somewhere, and when you get there, you go, well, I don't remember driving here. We do that every day in our lives when we're just walking or just talking or just doing the things that we normally do. You get to the end of the day and you go, what the hell did I do today? And it's not chemo brain and it's not these other explanations. It's just, I wasn't paying attention. I don't remember where I put my keys. Did I eat lunch? Wait, I've had to go to the bathroom for 3 hours. This is how we live. We don't actually notice that the ground under our feet is uneven and that we're being invited to pay better attention by the truth of that. So I did promise in my little thing about the class, even though I'm sort of constitutionally opposed to promises, that I'd give you some things to do. You might not like them. I didn't promise you'd like them, but be honest is the first one. And that, you know, part of the way we hold up the lie of ground under our feet is that we don't make room for what's true. Being sick, having cancer just magnifies this tendency for most people. If what's true is actually that I don't want to eat this thing tastes like metal, I don't want to go to this place, I don't want this person to come over with their casserole, we don't even give ourselves a millisecond to say, that's okay that I feel that. Our brain, without our consent, says unacceptable. The truth is unacceptable because somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. Somebody's illusion of ground under their feet is going to be at least questioned, if not shattered. So what would happen if we just developed a little bit of a practice of letting that in, of just giving ourselves like 2.5 seconds to just say, oh yeah, I don't actually want to see Sheila. Her casseroles are gross. I spend my whole time making her feel better. I'm already tired. Let's just not do that today. That can be okay. And certainly we all have different dynamics and things that, you know, I can't live your life for you, but this is a really human tendency to make the truth unacceptable. So when we let that in, when we say, oh, this is what's true, even if sometimes we say, ugh, but okay, she can come over, because if she comes over, then I've got a whole month before she wants to come over again. Let's just get it over with, right? But I'm going to make a choice. I'm not just going to say, yeah, it's fine, and then feel sort of defeated and like I wasn't part of that process. And choice is another big piece of this, that when we slow down for that 2.5 seconds, when we let in what's true, we see that there are choices. Because what's also true is that you're not responsible for other people's feelings. You're not responsible for other people's experience. So how much of the sense of not letting it in and rejecting what's really true is about trying to make other people feel things? You know, we do this thing where we talk about, you know, when we use these things to think about what we want, we often say, well, we should let her come over because I don't want her to feel blah, blah. What if we just shift that and we say, I want her to feel, because the guilt is about, you want her to feel appreciated. And there are a variety of ways to do that. They might not all include her coming over and taking up 2 hours of your time when you'd rather be sleeping. So what are the options when you think about what you want that person to feel, what you want you to feel, what you want to be able to say about how you spent your day when the day ends? Just feel how different that is when we say, I want this thing, or when I insert activity, emotion, expression, I feel. And to really, it seems like sort of simple, oh, just use I feel statements. And that sounds formulaic, but when you really feel inside you the difference between I don't want her to feel and I want her to feel, or I want me to feel, it's different. And it's a lot easier to deliver on a declarative statement than it is to find your way through and I don't want this. It leaves a lot more room for ambiguity when you come from that sort of negative perspective. So basically, we need to slow down and notice. And certainly in this time, we are like human pinballs, and we need to sort of say to ourselves and each other that pinballs are for arcades, and that we don't actually have to respond and react to everything. Change will happen with or without us. It is happening right now. We're going to get off of this call and all kinds of crap will have happened that we had nothing to do with over the course of this hour. Some of it, if we had been free, we would have meddled and it would have been a little bit different. But change keeps happening. So every moment offers us something worth noticing. Can we observe and witness and sort of feel wonder and notice our habit of reacting? When we feel a thing, we react. We want to discharge that feeling. What if we take that 2.5 seconds to just kind of be here, be okay with the shifting ground under our feet, to maintain a wide stance, you know, and just know that that's going to keep being true, and that it's not because I did something wrong. It's not because I didn't plan enough. It's not because I deserve it. It's because we're humans in this weird situation that we call life that is riddled with change. And that is just how it goes. So yeah, I wish I could put, no, I don't wish I could put ground under your feet. But I wish I could make it suck less, I guess. So that's what I have for tonight. And I would love to hear what you guys are wondering and thinking, and where you're all feeling at this moment.
Perfect. Thank you. I was on mute. I'm sorry.
And no worries.
Of course. That was wonderful. I saw some of the comments coming through, and one that just, it grabs your heart, and it was just from Liz saying that, she doesn't want to be forgotten. And that's just so normal, right? Like, it's just so normal. And oh my gosh.
Definitely. Well, and I think I would say, Liz, that, this is another place where we don't have to, that makes total sense. That is a superhuman urge. And I think this is just a place where we overdo. And, what do you want your sons to feel? What do you want them to think when they don't have you to talk to anymore? And how can you achieve that? It may not be something that costs a lot of money or that takes up a lot of space. And I think that this is part of what we struggle with as a society, is that, and I am hopeful that you have a close relationship with your sons, but I think so many of us don't really know the people that we want to be close to, or that we think we're close to. And so when we're trying to create a legacy, for instance, or when we just want them to feel how important they are to us, we're making up a story about what would be important to them, but we might be totally missing the mark. So I think that it's a place where we can sort of invite meaningful minimalism into our experience, and it takes the pressure off of us, and we get to do something that really does set our hearts and minds at ease.
Yeah. Trish had said, I love the subtle difference between acceptance and surrender. There truly is a difference. One feels like submission, the other feels like peace.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, I was thinking about what you said and sort of looking back on Liz's statement again. And I thought about your puzzle. And, Liz, every piece is every day, and every moment, like they're there. You're already making those memories every day. Just put them all together. All those pieces are together, and they're all ingrained in your son's hearts. And you don't have to do anything special. You are special. You're there, and that puzzle's being built every day. Every day they're going to feel that. Do you see what Tiffany said there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Tiffany is saying that when I recurred, definitely felt panicked and started to think my life. But now
think it rather than live it. Yeah.
Think my life. And now I'm living it.
Yeah.
COVID gave me time to process what. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I joined a little late. Can you talk again about the difference between surrender and what was surrender and acceptance, or surrender and?
Yeah. I mean, it's actually relatively simple, and it's just that, when people say, well, this is just how it is, you've got to accept it. I tend to talk a lot about how emotions feel in your body, but when you say, I'm just accepting this, or it is what it is, there's like a tightness that happens in your body. And if you surrender to the truth of what's in front of me is what's in front of me, there's not that same kind of breath holding and tension. There's a receptivity and a, the thing that I think we confuse in our simplistic use of language is that you don't have to like it to let it in. You can let it in because we know that resisting it doesn't change it. In fact, if anything, it just solidifies it. So whatever it might be, joy, sadness, surprise, loss, if we let it in and welcome it rather than, all right, you can come in, but good luck, it's going to be harder if we accept it than if we say, okay, I'm ready, be what you're going to be. And I mean, it's almost like turning on the lights to see that there's no monster under the bed, that if you just stay in the dark and go under the covers, the monster gets bigger. But when you turn the lights on and see that it was just your cat stuck under your cowboy hat, you go, oh yeah, that was silly. And you might still feel fear, but it's a different kind of fear.
I love that Joan just had a question and just put it out there. So, if we have, I think we have about 52 on. So I think you guys could unmute yourself if you just wanted to ask a question. I actually love hearing the voice,
Yeah, certainly. Well, and I love Trisha's comment that, well said, that acceptance leaves you with a job to do, because acceptance really is about continuing to push away. You have to keep holding up the no thank you. And with surrender, it washes through and you might feel it more fully, but then it becomes something else because nothing lasts. I mean, this is the double-edged sword of change, is that this too shall pass, whatever it is. So, when we let it through, it's going to become something else. It's going to become softer. It's going to become harder. It's going to become just another experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, interesting. Yeah, Tanya said, I was at Qigong class where they said, don't say my cancer, because that means you hold on to it. It feels like the difference between acceptance and surrender.
Mm. Interesting.
And I would say that is good advice, with the caveat that we talk in our classes often about the difference between service and helping. And one of the things that we really try to drive home is that these are just two words. So it's really about noticing how words feel different. So if you say my cancer in a way that comes from having spent time sort of making peace with it, and like you and your cancer are on a journey together, that's your business. It's really about how does it feel inside. And if it's like relating from your cancer instead of to your cancer, to call it my cancer, then there's your answer. It really, we each have our own road to walk, and it really is about how does it feel inside. When I say this, do I feel a closing up or do I feel possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Linda. First of all, thank you so much for your insights and how you put things. And you're right, you do put a very interesting spin on a lot of things that we would just take for granted. So it just gives us another way of looking at something, the same thing, but in a different angle. So thank you for that. That was well done. I got caught up in what you said about life and accepting. I had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. I treated it like it was something I had to get rid of instead of something that was invading me. It was, okay, what do I need to do to get rid of this cancer? And I never called it my cancer. It was this cancer. Which I never owned it. I took ownership of my body. I took ownership of my feelings. When friends would want to come over with casseroles, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know you bake and you cook delicious things, but right now the smell of water makes me nauseous. Can I take a rain check? And they were, it's like, of course. It was no big deal. So I never got stuck with 10 casseroles in the freezer from the onset. But
Good.
But I agree with you about taking ownership of of your feelings, and you can't tell another person how they feel, and you have to have words matter, and you have to have that type of friendship with your friends that they understand what you're saying. So when you don't want to see your friend Sheila, who you adore, because she brings you a casserole, say, I'd love to spend some time with you. I'm on this eating regime, and I can only eat specific things. And when I get off of it, I'd love to have your casserole again. That's what I would do to get out of it. I don't think I would cut off the friendship with her, but I would cut off the casseroles.
Right. We sometimes joke that casseroles are carcinogenic.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
It's a chicken egg thing. It's hard to say, but
no, I get it. It's yeah, but you can't tell anybody else that. So you have to, be diplomatic. And
yeah.
What saved me was a sense of balance and having a sense of humor.
Yeah.
When I had my first cancer, I thought, okay, I've had cancer. It's not going to happen again. And then, okay, 18 years later, I had breast cancer. And I wasn't a candidate for the usual chemotherapy radiation treatments. I had to have a bilateral mastectomy. And even though it's been 2 years, and I still walk, when I get out of the shower, I still expect to see my girls. And occasionally when I turn over in bed late at night, I feel boob flop. That's a medical term. And it means you're feeling your boobs flop even though they're not there anymore. It's like phantom pain.
Phantom boobs. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's phantom. So it is a technical term. I named it. My doctor loved it.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you, because a lot of your words are going to be part of my journey now.
Oh,
and that's all.
You.
So thank you so much.
Certainly. Well, and I think that, we have to take everything with a great big salt lick, because, it's such a complicated thing, the way that we all share what we feel like is our wisdom. And that, on some level, for most of us, when we share what we've learned, it's because we don't want to go back to the suffering that led us to that wisdom. We don't want to watch the person in front of us suffer. And we just want to make it stop. And so we are so excited to say to a person who appears to be suffering the way we suffered, oh, this is what I did. And share that. Absolutely share it. If they don't take it on, if they try it and it doesn't work, that's just what happened. It's not because they suck. It's not because they didn't try hard enough. It's not because you're lying to yourself. We all have our own things. We talk all the time about people who get sort of like zealots about the keto diet or the Whole30 or whatever worked for them. That's amazing that it worked for you. And I'm so glad about that. And I hope you stick with that. I might try it. I might not try it. It's not a judgment on your character. It's not a judgment on my character. I'm having my own journey, and maybe part of my journey is continuing to suffer. Maybe part of my journey is being able to take in the things that I can use and to not take in the things I can't use. But we're not good at just setting down our wisdom for the taking. We set it down with an expectation of relief of suffering for the other person, or gratitude from the other person, or it's always a sort of subtly contractual engagement that we don't even know we're doing. And I think that's part of our hard work also, is to know that we may have found our own way out of that wet paper bag, but this person has to find their own stick sometimes. And, can we share and back away and not be attached to the outcome of what worked for us and whether or not it works for somebody else?
Well said. Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have anything else to add to that, or any questions for Cal? Feel free to use the chat, or you can unmute yourself. All right. Well, Cal, terrific. A lot of thank yous, a lot of love. Really appreciate your perspective today.
My pleasure to be with you guys. And I know that everybody's in a different place on their journey, but we do have spots left in the Year to Live class. So we'll meet monthly for 90 minutes on a Monday night, the first Monday of every month. And throughout the year, from this November to next November, we'll do meditations, we'll do explorations, we'll do everything from sort of what's holding you back about your life inside. We'll do actual practical things about planning for end of life. And, you know, this is open to anyone. So there's actually already a really great mix of people who, many of whom will be coming to this sort of work for the first time. But it will be I think a really supportive adventure and an opportunity to clear out some of the cobwebs that you might not know are there. So we're holding that course through Healwell. So it's at healwell.org, and I can send the link to Sue for anybody who's interested. But yeah, it's you can go to online.healwell.org. I guess I can type in my own chat, can't I?
Yeah, I was just doing it for you.
Very fancy. Yeah, and it's called A Year to Live. Yeah, I mean, there's no time like the present, and none of us knows when our last year will be. So it would be great to see some of your faces and hearts there if you feel led to do that.
Nice.
Thank you guys for having me.
Terrific. Thank you, Cal. Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
All right. Everyone have a good evening. Thanks for joining us for October. We have another one coming up in November. Check our calendar, check our website. We actually have Darlene Hart joining us in November. And then we have Sabita. Oh gosh, she's going to be joining us in December, you know, on sexual health counseling. All right, everyone, have a good evening and stay safe and well.
Thanks, Cal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful program.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
You're welcome.